There's no denying it. Chinese weightlifters, they just move different. The precision, the speed, the upright posture, the bar never lies, and their lifts look almost effortless. But here's the mistake I see a lot of lifters make. They try to copy the technique step by step without asking the real question, does this actually suit my body? Because the truth is, what works for them isn't always going to be working for you. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down a few elite Chinese Olympic weightlifters so we can have a look at their technique, have a look at the points that would be very beneficial for us to implement into our training, but then also some of the things that really only suit them based on their training ability, mobility, range of motion, and of course, their limb length. Now there's this stigma around Chinese weightlifters lifting with slightly different technique to the rest of the world. But what I really want to get into today is that just like in any nation of Olympic weightlifting, you will always see variations in the way that people execute the technique. But there's one thing for sure, the Chinese weightlifters are extremely efficient, have topped the medal tables for many, many years now. So there's obviously some great factors there that we can try and implement. So let's start off by taking a look at Tian Tao, one of the greatest Chinese Olympic weightlifters, and in my opinion, one of the athletes that actually has one of the best technical executions that you'll see. So let's start off by taking a look at this lift. This is him snatching 150 kilos, so fairly comfortable weight. I'm pretty sure he snatched in excess of 175 kilos. There's a couple of things that I want you to notice right from the get-go. So one thing that you'll see is Tian Tao actually starts for a static start position, and you'll see right before he initiates the lift, he takes attention. Things that we'll see proportionally in terms of his setup, which I really like, is the way that his feet are set in the setup. Now you'll commonly see this in a lot of Chinese weightlifters. They'll turn the toes out very slightly in the start, but what you'll also see is that the knee position is still sat directly above the foot. Now this makes it easy for us to utilize the legs in the first phase of the lift. And by turning the toes out very slightly, this will help the shins clear in the first phase. Other things that you'll notice that's great here is you'll see the shoulders are directly above the bar. You'll see the wrists are sitting flat, not tucked underneath. And that you'll see the eye line in his setup position is looking just above eye level, which is absolutely perfect in my opinion. Now, as he initiates, you'll see that the legs work cohesively with every other part of his body and everything moves in one unit. Now this is a really good indication that the legs are being used to the maximum in the first phase of the pull. And what I also really like to see here is you'll notice how the feet are staying completely planted as he's pushing from the floor. That's great because what we're seeing there is good balance off the floor. Now, naturally, as athletes are starting to lift heavier and they're moving closer to where their maximum strength limits are, especially in the first phase of the pull, sometimes we'll see loss of balance in this first phase. But in an ideal world, we're keeping the feet completely flat there, and the chest is the leading point, which you'll see he's keeping his chest up really nicely here as he's progressing through the lift. One thing that I want to touch on here, and this is something that for me, I try and avoid athletes doing from the setup position, but what you'll notice is you'll see that the knees are very slightly pushed out against the arm at this point. Now, I often see when that is the case that we'll see a slight bend happening of the arm as we start to progress past the knee. Now, what's really important, because I know a lot of people struggle with an early arm bend, is at this point, the bend doesn't get any worse, okay? That means the arms aren't having to deviate the bar through the middle phase of the lift, and we can keep the load on the legs. And you'll see that that's exactly what happens here for Tian Tao as he comes into his second phase of the lift, where he's about to strike. Now, before we get moving on from here, what I want you to notice that happens really well as the bar is passing the knees is the knees are moving forward very slightly, which is referred to as the double knee bend, okay? And you'll see that their feet are staying completely flat till the bar is reached now just above mid to upper thigh. Now, the shoulders are staying directly above the bar, which is really good to see at this point. And you'll see now that we're getting huge extension here with the legs. So big, strong legs are doing all the work there. The heels are rising up and all the way through into contact at this point. The bar is staying in contact with the body here, which is great. The shoulders have now moved back just very slightly behind the bar line, which is good. It's meaning that the hips have come through at this point. So he's squeezed his glutes to use his big, strong glutes to get that vertical extension here at the top phase of the lift. And this is absolutely brilliant. Now, one thing that you'll notice that a lot of Chinese lifters do is they don't have a huge amount of foot movement. The feet don't aggressively lift up and plant down. They're very, very efficient with the footwork. But what you will see is as the bar rises, his feet are moving out very slightly into his receiving position. And I'll just put a little line on that so you can see. If I just draw inside edges of his feet here on the ground, what you'll see is as he's moved into his receive, the feet have moved out very slightly, which is good. That's made enough room for his hips to sit between the ankles, his torso to stay upright, and to achieve a really, really solid lockout position, which I love. Now let's talk about why this lockout position is so good. Now what we'll notice is that the knees are still in that great position where they're above the toe. I always find that if the knees are sitting forward at this point, it allows us to maintain tension. And this is something that you'll see in comparison to the other Chinese lifter that we're going to be taking a look at today, the differences between the two in terms of stability. Now, what we'll see is a great level of external rotation here at the shoulder, which is brilliant. That helps achieve a really nice, solid lockout position. The wrist is sat back here in the overhead, and the eyes are still looking up in this position, which gives us a nice upright torso position. If you're enjoying this, then you'll absolutely love my 12-day Common Fault Masterclass that I've put together, which is absolutely free. Now, these are videos that are under 5 minutes to consume, and they're actually gonna help you lift better, with better technique, and with heavier weights. Sounds good, right? I've used this protocol for athletes right the way from beginners all the way up to my athletes that compete at the CrossFit Games level. And the best thing is this used to be a paid product, but I'm giving it away to you for absolutely free. So go ahead, hit the link in the description below and enjoy. Now, one thing that you'll notice with a lot of the top Chinese weightlifters is they have very short limb lengths. So short legs, short femurs, short shins, humerus, the lot. Now, when we've got short limb lengths and we've got a very long torso, this makes it much easier for us to maintain a very upright torso position in the receiving position of the snatch. And this is one reason why you'll see a lot of the top Chinese weightlifters that are generally selected for their body shapes and body types to be experts in the field of Olympic weightlifting. You'll see this upright torso position consistent. Now, that's not to say that you can't be an amazing Olympic weightlifter if you have a short torso and long legs. It's just not going to allow you to lift in the same technique as a Chinese weightlifter may do. And this is one of the things that a lot of people, I guess, get wrong when they go online, they go on YouTube and they search Chinese weightlifters, and we see how flawless and lovely their technique looks like, and we try and replicate it. You have to remember that your technique will be different based on your body shape. And an expert coach will help you develop a technique that's going to allow you to execute the technique as best as possible for your given body shape. We can't really pigeonhole you into a technical principle of, say, Chinese weightlifting or Eastern European or American, because everyone has different body shapes. But there's key principles that, regardless of your body shape, remain the same in every well-executed Olympic weightlifting technique. And if I was to highlight them, I'd say one of the most important positions is this one. At the point where we're coming into extension, making sure that the arms are relaxed, the shoulders are above the bar at this point, we've got good knee bend happening, which we see here, which is great, which ultimately allows us to get good vertical extension. Now, for a consistent bar path or consistent trajectory of the bar during this middle phase of the lift, we want to minimize the amount of movement back at the shoulder. If there's too much excessive movement back of the shoulders at the top phase of the lift, this can cause inconsistencies in trajectory through the middle phase of the lift. Now, what I mean when I talk about trajectory is I'm talking about the way in which the bar moves from the hip here. Now, in an ideal world, the more vertical we can get the bar moving at this point, the closer it stays to the center of gravity, the easier it is going to be for you to be able to catch it in a stable position. If the shoulders move back, what this also will cause is that the head at this point, if it's moving back into this point, has to move even more excessively forward into the receive position, which can cause inconsistencies in the catch. And again, when we think about creating a comfortable technique for the average CrossFitter, someone who's taking up weightlifting, the easier we can make it for ourselves from a technical standpoint, the better. So the more vertical that we can get the head to drop at this point, the easier it is going to be for you to be consistent. But of course, again, I can't stress enough the importance of having great mobility in order to be able to achieve a technique anything like what the Chinese are doing. Okay? Remember, these guys have started from a very, very young age. Normally before the age of 10 years old, they're doing Olympic weightlifting. They have great mobility and then they've maintained it. That's a very different start point than what you see for a lot of athletes nowadays that are getting into weightlifting after the age of 30 that don't have that range of motion and will find it difficult to try and replicate this technique without investing the time and energy specifically in mobility. And that's part of the reason why I developed the mobility manual, because it's one of the key things that I see people struggling with when it comes to mastering Olympic weightlifting. And you can check out my 40-day protocol below this video. It's absolutely perfect if mobility is one of the things that's holding you back from progressing with your lifting. Anyway, we'll get back to the analysis now, and I want to actually take you through what we're going to see in terms of difference in another Chinese lifting technique. Still an absolutely incredible snatch, 169. Very, very impressive. But let's have a look at the differences. So one thing that you'll notice here is we have a slightly lower start position with the hip. And you'll see how the knees are driven forward quite aggressively now in comparison to Tian Tao. So they're actually in front of the toe at this point. So I'd suggest this athlete has slightly longer limbs than Tian Tao in this position. Starting with the slightly lower hip will help get the legs involved early on in the lift, but regardless of that, you'll see still a very upright chest position at the start of the lift. Now, when we start pulling away, you'll see that before the bars even reach knee height, in my opinion, we've come slightly out of position here. So the shoulders are gone now in front of the bar. The heels, if you notice here, have come up, and there's a lot more load here in the back than what we saw with Tian Tao. So, hey, we've got two Chinese weightlifters with slightly different technique, both of them snatching in excess of 160 kilos. So very, very impressive regardless. But again, what I want you to notice now is when I talked about that key position that remains the same, regardless of either of these athletes' technique in the first phase of the lift, we will once again see great knee bend, shoulder position directly above the bar, arms are relaxed, and we're in a great position to create vertical force through this middle phase of the lift. So that's the first thing that I want you to take into account. The one thing I will say in comparison between the two, trying to execute what this athlete is doing consistently versus what Tian Tao does from a static position is far, far easier. And that's largely why majority of athletes or majority of coaches will tend to lean towards a static start position for execution. Unless, of course, you're training in excess of 2-3 times a day and you can put in the time and effort to become consistent in this slightly lower start position. Now, as we progress on, you'll see one thing that I touched on here in the differences in the head position. So you will see here for this particular athlete, the head's gone right back here at the top. Eyes are now looking up towards the ceiling. And the reason why I don't like to see this eye line change at this point is because it really affects balance when you're coming into the receive position. So let's watch what happens now as we transition underneath the bar. So we'll see minimal foot movement, okay? Watch that. So the feet are very slightly shifted. Now, Chinese are known for this. Like I said, it allows them to be very efficient in the turnover phase of the lift in terms of what's happening from the point where the bar here is reaching its maximum height, which we'll draw on here, and then we'll look at the receive height, bang. Look at that for a turnover, and that footwork will definitely allow people to do that. But one thing that you'll notice that's allowed this athlete to still save this lift is the ridiculous range of motion that we're seeing at the hip here. So we're seeing great range of motion. The bum is almost touching the floor without the feet even moving. But one thing I did mention earlier as well is naturally when we see the feet don't move, it increases the likelihood at this point for the lower back to round. Now again, we have a very long torso here as well, but you'll see how we've lost that tension in the lower back. And as a result of that, the athlete has struggled to stabilize the lift. Now, you'll see a slightly different overhead position for this athlete. So you'll see a little bit more internal rotation and a dropped chest position in the catch. Eyes are now looking down at the floor in this receiving position. Ultimately, for me, this isn't going to be something that's going to be super consistent for anyone else to try to replicate purely because they don't have the range of motion, the mobility requirements, and the skill acquisition to be able to do this. But nonetheless, you'll see what this athlete does to recover this. You'll see the position change now. And as he's changed position, look at the height in which the bar has come up here. So look as he changes position, you'll see here, that height has almost come up 2 or 3 inches here. So although this would have been now ideal catch position if he received in that, if you look at the actual height in which he pulled the bar to, if he had tried to receive at that point, he potentially would not have made the lift because there was not really enough height on the bar in order for him to execute it. So again, this style of lifting for him is working. If we were to change his technique at all to potentially move to more what Tian Tao was doing, you'd see slightly more height gain during the extension phase, because instead of the shoulders going back, we'd stay a little bit taller in this top phase of lift, potentially generating a little bit more height through the middle phase of lift, which would then, if he was to catch in this slightly higher position, would allow him to be a little bit more stable in the standing up phase. But that's ultimately why you'll tend to see that chest drop in the receive position, a slight bit of internal rotation on the shoulder there. They have extremely big shoulders and very strong shoulders, the Chinese weightlifters do, to be able to stabilize this bar in the stand-up. So I'm just going to pull up both lifters now just to kind of highlight these points, and I hope this is kind of giving you guys a little bit more of an understanding into the different methodology that we see from the Chinese lifters. Athlete 1, slightly lower hips. Athlete 2, hips very slightly higher in this start position, but torso angles slightly different. You'll see at this point here, like I said, arguably one of the most important positions of the snatch. You'll see consistency between both athletes during this phase. Shoulders above the bar, great knee bend, although the foot position is very different for the two. You'll see at top position, again, regardless, great extension from the lower body, but one athlete's shoulders are further back, the other ones are slightly more vertical. In the receive position, for Tian Tao, you see it being a lot more stable because of the foot movement, okay, but arguably the bar height is higher as a result of that. And again, very, very different receiving positions for the two athletes. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Like I said, it just goes to show the importance of understanding your technique and what is right for you. And if you're watching this video thinking, I need to know what is the right technique for me, then all you need to do is go ahead and hit the link below this video. You'll be able to book in a call to discuss your technique with me, find out what the best approach is moving forward, see if there's a strategic plan that we can go through with myself at the lifting zone to see you guys hit some new PBs on your Olympic lifts. And if you don't want to do that and you just want to consume some more great free content, then you'll see a link to my 12 common faults guide. So this will help you correct any of the most consistent faults that I see in Olympic weightlifting, all by yourself by watching through the video course. So I hope you guys enjoy that.